Let's take a closer look at the rebound and mid-valve assembly. This example has a sleeve built into it. Sometimes this is a separate piece, but the length of this is important for setting up the proper float on the mid-valve, which is one of the most critical pieces of mid-valve setup. So let's go ahead and start assembly by installing the check spring, then the packing stack of the mid-valve, the working shims of the mid-valve, and then the sleeve extender shims. These are not on all bikes, but are on some. You'd refer to your DVS setup sheet to see whether they were there. The way you can tell that they are there, they are 8 millimeters OD, 6 millimeters ID on a shaft that is 6 millimeters. And what would happen is you could install those first or install them last. It doesn't really matter. I like to install them last, and you don't have to kind of work the other shims over them. But anyway, then we would install the rebound gold valve. And the rebound gold valve has two sides to it. This side is flat. It would go up against the rebound stack. And this side has a recess in it right here. So you'd want to make sure that the recess goes down. Then we continue on with, in this case, this is the low-speed rebound stack. This is a two-stage stack. Not all rebound stacks are two-stage. If it is a two-stage stack, it will have a smaller diameter crossover shim, and then the high-speed stack. Next comes spacing shims, if needed. Will not be needed on all setups, but these shims are added by the installer to create the correct total valve stack thickness. Then comes the base plate, then a drop of Loctite on the nut, and torque it to the spec called out in the DVS setup sheet. Sometimes we will reuse the stock nut, particularly on WP. That nut is directional, so there's an up and a down to it, so pay attention to that. So let's look at this as a cross section and point out some of the details. So all of this is mid-valve stack. Working shims here, packing shims here, and these are the sleeve extender shims. Up on top, we've got rebound stack. Again, two-stage rebound stack, low speed, crossover, high speed, and then here is where we would put spacing shims if needed. It is important that the nut does not run out of thread, and we typically want about a 0.5 millimeter or so of extra thread available so that we ensure that the nut does not run out of thread. So you would have to determine whether your particular application requires spacer shims. Now, the important thing about the spacer shim is you'll notice that the diameter of the spacer shim is larger than the smallest diameter shim on the rebound stack. Notice also here we've got a bleed hole drilled. Some installations require a bleed hole, some do not. Refer to your DVS setup sheet. Inspect your piston. There may be a pre-drilled bleed hole there. There may not be. You may have to add one. Just pay attention to the DVS setup sheet and inspect your piston. So what we'll do from here, I want to show you the part of the inspection here. And that is, it's very critical that you get the correct float. The float is determined by the mid-valve stack, sleeve extenders, and the length of the sleeve. And we would check that with a feeler gauge. If it is not correct based off the feeler gauge, then what you would want to do is take this apart and check to see that the stack was built properly. There is always the possibility that there are production tolerances that might add up in the wrong direction, but you want to inspect this to make sure that it is correct. So a visual inspection is a critical part of the installation, and what you do also on the rebound side of it is make sure that the shims lay flat against the piston and you can clearly see the crossover if you have a two-stage stack. So on this rebound valve, we also have a mid valve, and we want to inspect it after assembly with everything tight. So rebound stack up here, mid valve stack down here. We're set up with a 0.45 float. It actually calculates mathematically to a 0.50 float, but we lose some clearance when we tighten everything down. So I've got 3 feeler gauges, 0.43, 0.45, and 0.48. I'll try 0.43 first. And what I'm looking for, so this is actually going in fairly easily, but notice that it goes all the way to the shaft there. Here's a 0.45. It's feeling a lot more snug, but it goes all the way to the shaft. And this is a 0.48. And you can see that that one isn't going all the way to the shaft. So I would call this a 0.45, which is actually what our target was for this bike. Once again, inspect the rebound stack as well. Make sure that all the shims are sitting flat. There isn't any gaps or any bending or warping or any dirt in the valves, that kind of thing. Also inspect that on the mid-valve side too. So just make sure everything looks good and you double check and the predicted amount of float.